Did you know that the very first solar panel was installed on a roof in New York City in 1884? 1884. So almost 140 years ago. And still, if I hear certain politicians being asked about solar energy, they're answering in a very reluctant way. Being reluctant after 140 years of innovation. Seriously? The same thing or the same game has been happening for more than 50 years in the United States. So in the last century, in the 1970s, we had the oil crisis. That was a moment that people started to realize we have to start to invest in new energy production technology, and preferably even renewable. It took until 1979 that President Jimmy Carter, installed the first solar panels on the roof of the White House, 32 panels. But it only took 2 years until 1981 that Ronald Reagan removed them again. The same thing happened again quite recently. In 2010, Barack Obama installed new solar panels on the roof of the White House, which were in the meanwhile 6 times as good as the ones of Carter. And then 2016, Donald Trump came into play. And we all know Donald, the Donald. He's not very much a fan of renewable energy. He reversed many of the energy initiatives, the renewable energy initiatives of Barack Obama. And even by the end of his term, he just stepped out of the climate agreement. But after his 4 years in the White House, he left the White House and there were still solar panels on the roof. So or he forgot them, or he really realized that solar energy is working very well. I believe the second one, because indeed, solar energy is a very important aspect of our energy transition. This is a transition to a low-carbon society, and something we all need and we all feel in the meanwhile. Think about climate change. Welcome to Energyville. Here in Energyville, in the labs behind me, we are investigating all kinds of aspects of the energy transition. My name is Bart Vermang. I'm a professor of renewable energy technology with a focus on solar here in Energyville. And indeed, Donald was right. Solar is an important aspect of the energy transition. 2 main reasons. It's working well and it's very cheap. And because of that, solar is the fastest growing energy production technology that we have for the moment. Just to give you an idea on how fast it is going, I'm going to use my own career. So in 2008, I was doing my own PhD. I just started my PhD. And in 2008, we just surpassed 10 gigawatt peak. And it doesn't say that much, but 10 gigawatt peak is about 1 modern large nuclear power plant. 2022, 14 years later, 1 terawatt peak. So times 100 or 100 modern large nuclear power plants. So from only 1, we went to 100 in 14 years. 2050, we know if we want to limit climate change to 1.5 degrees Celsius, we will have to go for 50 terawatt peak. So times 50 or 5,000 of these nuclear power plants. All trends, expectations and plans really indicate that we will indeed multiply again the whole market by at least 50. Just to give you an idea on how fast it's going right now, every 1 second, somewhere in the world, there are 2 family roofs being covered with solar energy. So another 2 roofs, another 2 roofs, another 2 roofs, and so on. And this pace is still accelerating. By 2050, it will be incredible. So it's all about sustainability for the moment. Because indeed, the last 10 to 20 years, growth was incredible, which will continue for another 25 to 30 years. So I'm going to look first if PV or solar energy is sustainable right now, and then we will have a look at some challenges that we will meet if we want to be sustainable in 2050. Today, I can have a look at 2 different aspects, which is energy and environmental impact. First, energy. Energy payback time is the metric we are typically looking at. It's the amount of time that we need the solar panel to operate to be able to recover the production energy. 1 year. So typically, we need the panel to operate for 1 year to be able to cover the amount of energy we needed to produce it, which means that for at least another 20 years, we will make energy profit. So you can see that's quite sustainable. Environmental impact or carbon footprint. This is about waste, emissions, energy needed, materials needed, and so on. From sourcing the materials to actually producing the solar panel, to transporting it to a certain location, installing it, letting it operate, and taking it out of operation, plus recycling. That whole life cycle. Well, the carbon footprint for solar energy is one of the lowest of all energy production technologies. So also there, quite sustainable. And both aspects, energy and environmental impact, both are still decreasing, as I will discuss soon again. 2050. We will see now that innovation is an important aspect for solar energy. Not to improve the technology, just to remain sustainable. And I will talk about three main challenges. First main challenge, we have to use less and more sustainable energy and materials. First, materials. And I'm going to use books quite often as a comparison. If you think about books, we have or a hardcover book or a paperback book. A hardcover book is heavy, thick, needs quite some energy to make it, more expensive than a paperback. A paperback is thin, lightweight, and so on. We do have the same thing as solar panels. We have something we call thin film solar panels. These are the paperbacks of the solar panels. So we need less material, which means we also have a lower carbon footprint or we are more sustainable. And indeed, by moving to thin film solar panels, we will be able to reduce the carbon footprint even more. Energy. If we do business as usual and we continue the next 25 to 30 years, at a certain moment, with that incredible growth, at a certain moment, we will need to install solar panels to be able to make solar panels. Or we will need to burn books to be able to make books. That's not the idea. So this energy payback time of 1 year has to be reduced even more. And indeed, I think you can imagine that having a paperback as compared to a hardcover book, that the paperback will need less energy. So it's true, going for thin film solar panels will also help us in reducing the energy payback time a lot. Second main challenge, recycling. We have to go for 100% recycling. If I go back to the books, it's rather easy to recycle a book. But at the same moment, if you would be using a book for 20 years, day in, day out, all the time, just reading it all the time, by the end of those 20 years, you will have a few papers left, but probably not a book. While for a solar panel, it's out there for at least 20 years, operating day in, day out, all the time. And the wear and tear is very small. However, for a book, it's easy to disassemble and recycle. For a solar panel, it's a bit more difficult. Still, at this moment, typically about 80% of the weight of a solar panel can be recycled. But with the incredible growth we expect, we have to move to 100%. And it's happening. That's the good news. There are the first companies bringing fully recyclable solar panels to the market. So this is also clearly happening. Third main challenge, multifunctional integration. This is very similar to the step from a normal paper book to an electronic book, an e-book, where an e-book has many more functions as compared to an old-fashioned book. An e-book gives light in the dark. It's like a library. It's not one book, but like 50 books. It even helps with reading. It's reader-friendly. It supports language when you're reading it. So it's many more functions as you would expect from a normal book. The same thing is happening with solar energy. Because of the low cost that we have for solar energy, many more functions are being added for the moment. Think about solar integration into roofs, into facades of buildings, into cars. Bring an extra function as a roof tile, or a facade element, or a car body, or even a better example, a more recent example, agricultural solar energy. So we're using an integrated solar panel on top of fertile farmland. Fertile farmland on which we still can grow some crops. In such a way that the solar panel above it transmits enough solar energy that the crop can grow, but absorbs enough solar energy to have some extra functions. Think about heating, lighting, watering, all functions you need to grow the crop in a very nice way. Those were the three main challenges we have. The good news is we do have innovation roadmaps. So we know what kind of innovations we have to develop to be able to have that growth in a sustainable way. And those innovations, that's what we do here in the lab in Energyville. If we do those innovations, we will indeed have a sustainable growth to an energy transition, a low carbon energy transition, in which solar will have a very important part. It will be dominating even. And for the last part of my talk, I'm not going to compare it to a book, but I'm going to compare it to a movie. The movie E.T. by Steven Spielberg. E.T. is also the abbreviation of energy transition, and that's not a coincidence, as you will see in a few seconds. But it also stands for extraterrestrial, an alien. It's a quite old movie in the meanwhile, but it's not very much dated. It's very much a classic and a very good movie to look at. So check it out. The story goes like this. So there is an alien that ends up on Earth. And of course, as you can imagine, humanity is not really welcoming that alien. They're quite cautious. Luckily, there's this one boy, Elliot, about 10 years old, and he's also quite cautious in the beginning, but he's the first person who finds E.T., brings him back home, and really welcomes him. And there's a whole adventure where it becomes clear that E.T. is good for the climate, that E.T. is a sweet alien being in the end, and by the end of the movie, both Elliot, the 10-year-old boy, and E.T. are growing in each other's direction and even becoming the one and the same person almost. To me, it's not a coincidence that the energy transition can be abbreviated as ET. Because indeed, many of us are also fearing the energy transition like they were fearing ET, humans were fearing ET in that movie. And there's no reason for that. We do know what to do to make this energy transition happen. It will be good for us, it will be good for the climate, and so on. So my last message is that all of us, we should be a bit more like Elliot. We should be open to the energy transition, welcome it with open hands, with open arms. And only by doing so, it will really happen and will even become the energy transition. So be more like Elliot and welcome ET. Embrace ET.